Have you ever gotten a text message on your phone or computer and wondered how it got there? Like how a text from her Uncle John in Bismarck, North Dakota made its way all the way to your friend Haley's iPhone lying next to you on the beach in Bali, Indonesia, in just a fraction of a second? Did it magically just fly through the air? Was it beamed up to space, bounced off a satellite, and back down to you? The answer is both yes and no. That message did magically fly through the air, although the magic part is debatable. And there's even a chance that it was relayed by satellite, depending on where you are in the world. But there's a whole lot more to the story than that, and many more steps between Bismarck and Bali than you might imagine. To understand how that one little text message traveled halfway around the world, it helps to know how the internet works. And if you want to know just what the internet is and how it functions, well, you could say the whole thing is one big LAN party. But what the heck is a LAN party, and how in the world can it help you understand the internet? To answer that question, we have to journey into the past, to a time before smartphones, before Wi-Fi. A time when connecting to the internet meant you had to use a modem to dial up, taking over your family's house phone line, and if your little sister picked up the phone while you were connected, she could kick you off. Let's go back in time to that ancient world of 25 years ago and see what people were up to back then. If you were born after a certain year, let's say 1995, chances are you've never even heard of a LAN party. Is it some kind of party where everyone puts on fancy jewelry? Do they get together to trade real estate? In fact, there's no reason why you couldn't do either of those at a LAN party. But let's find out what a LAN is first and why you might want to host a party for one. LAN stands for Local Area Network. It's the most basic kind of network formed by connecting two different digital devices, such as computers. When you connect your phone or laptop to the Wi-Fi router in your house, you're actually joining a LAN. Every device that connects to that router is now on the same LAN, and they can all communicate with each other, as well as connect to the internet. Back in the olden days, before everything from your smartphone to your coffee maker had Wi-Fi, the only way to connect your computer to the internet was with a physical wire called an Ethernet cable. If you had more than two computers plugged together, you needed an Ethernet hub, or switch, to connect them all to the same network. When computers got smaller and more affordable, more and more people started to get them in their homes and offices, and people realized how important it was for their computers to be able to share information with their friends, family, and workmates on the same network. Then along came video games. Video games used to be a solo affair. You played them by yourself on a console or computer, and plugged in more controllers to play with friends in the same room. But as the technology for networking computers got faster, and video games got more advanced, suddenly you could play the same game with someone over the internet, or someone connected to the same Ethernet hub that you were. People started networking their computers just to play games in the same place, or bringing their whole computer or game console over to friends' houses, so that more and more people could be playing the same game at the same time. And thus, the LAN party was born. Of course, people did way more than just play games at their LAN parties. They would get together to work on digital art projects, write software, even hack into other networks. Today, the whole internet is like one gigantic LAN party since all of our devices are connected to every other device everywhere in the world, all the time. The internet is actually called a WAN, or Wide Area Network, which is the term for multiple LANs networked together. Now we can use our smartphones and computers for absolutely everything. We pay our bills, order food, chat with friends, trade on the stock market, even stalk our exes.
Lives in Shreveport, Louisiana?
But how is it that all our phones, computers, tablets, cars, refrigerators, light bulbs, security cameras, watches, and more are all connected to the same huge WAN? They're not all plugged into the same hub, and certainly not with cables. Imagine the mess. Most of our devices communicate wirelessly, over Wi-Fi or cellular data connections, but they're still not talking directly to one another, especially between faraway places. Let's go back to Haley and her Uncle John to see how the internet works to connect all those devices together all over the world, and how they can all talk to each other almost instantly, with what seems like the greatest of ease. The truth is that there's nothing easy about making the internet work, and it takes a huge amount of equipment and people managing it just so a text message can travel from Bismarck to Bali. The easiest way to think about the internet is like a cake. Ever seen one of those big cakes with lots of layers, like a wedding cake? The big layer on the bottom holds up another smaller layer, and a smaller layer on top of that, and another until the very tippy top layer with the little plastic bride and groom on top. The internet is like that layer cake. Let's start at the top with the plastic people. That could be you and me, even though you might not be ready to get married yet. And much like a marriage, we're all wedded to the internet these days. But even if we don't like it, there's not much chance we could ever get divorced, even if we wanted to. Those little plastic people could represent every single person around the world using a device that's connected to the internet, like your smartphone. This top layer of the cake is called the last mile, not because it's actually a mile long, but because that's the final distance between the internet and the end user, like Haley or her Uncle John. Let's imagine that Uncle John decides to text Haley, his niece, wishing her a lovely time on her trip to Bali. The first thing he does is open up his phone and type that message into a texting app like iMessage. Then he hits send. What happens next is so astonishing it might as well be magic. All the information sent and received over the internet travels in what are called packets. Packets are tiny pieces of data that, when we put them together, make up a whole file like a photo or a text message. When Uncle John hits send, his text is broken down into packets, which are organized with a header, kind of like an envelope with Haley's address written on it, that also contains instructions for putting the packets back together again. Those packets are then sent whizzing through the internet to be reassembled at their destination, in this case, Haley's iPhone. Why not just send the whole text in one big file? Well, that's a complicated question, but the simple answer is that there's a lot of traffic online. There are so many texts, photos, videos, payments, and all kinds of data flowing back and forth on the internet that the only way we can put it all together is if data is broken up into packets, which can be sent in any order and put back together like a puzzle at the other end. At any rate, Uncle John writes his text and hits send, and his phone turns this text into packets, ready to be sent over the internet. Only the problem now is, how does it get from his phone to the Wi-Fi router in his house, or the nearest cell tower if he is away from home? To begin with, computers don't speak the same language as you and I. It might look like they do to us, but when they talk to each other over networks like the internet, they use what is called binary. Binary is just ones and zeros, called bits, and a string of binary code looks like this. 011, 010, 00. You get the picture. All those bits add up to the word hello. So you can imagine how much binary it takes just to write a short text message. Lucky for us, computers can talk to each other very, very, very fast, up to hundreds of billions of bits per second for modern processors. But how can they send those hyperspeed messages between them? If John typed his message on a computer, and it was sent over copper Ethernet wires, it would have been sent in pulses of electricity. 1 pulse for the number 1, and no pulse for the number 0. Lots of little on and off pulses would add up to an entire string of binary bits, representing a single piece of data. However, John is using his cell phone, and his cell phone uses radio waves to talk to the Wi-Fi router or cell tower. In fact, Wi-Fi and cell phones are exactly that, fancy radios. But instead of pulses of electricity, the radio waves coming from John's phone create the binary pattern. Radio waves travel at certain frequencies, so if you hear someone talking about 3G or 4G, what they're really saying is a frequency of 3 or 4 gigahertz. Hertz is a measurement of cycles per second, in this case, radio waves, and a giga means 1,000. So if your phone is working on a 4G network, that means it can send and receive about 1 billion waves per second. Your phone sends short or long waves that can mean a 1 or a 0. And all those waves add up to strings of binary encoded packets, which the Wi-Fi router can understand. The router then turns those packets back into electrical signals and sends them on to the rest of the internet. Not so magic after all. But here's our little secret. Those copper Ethernet wires we talked about, they're starting to disappear. Every day, more copper wires are being replaced by fiber optic cable, which doesn't transmit electricity, it transmits light. Fiber optic cable is made up of tiny transparent threads, which can carry beams of light across huge distances. Each thin cable has several protective layers, but data is carried through the core, a single continuous strand of glass or plastic, whose diameter is measured in microns, or less than the width of a human hair. The larger the core, the more light the cables carry, which means more data. Instead of pulses of electricity, fiber optics carry data in pulses of light, which can move much faster than electricity over copper wires, at the speed of light actually. So John's cell phone breaks down his text into packets, which are then turned into radio waves and transmitted to his Wi-Fi router, where it takes the binary code and turns it into pulses of light, which are sent on to the next section in the internet layer cake, internet hubs. If our cake has 3 layers, internet hubs are the middle layer, resting between the top layer of routers and devices, or the last mile, and the bottom layer, which has its own fun name, but we'll get there. Internet hubs are like the post offices of the internet. They receive all the envelopes, all the packets and headers of people's data, sort them, and send them on to the next stage in their journey, wherever that might be. Your internet service provider, or ISP, is an internet hub. This could be your cable company, phone company, or whoever provides your internet service. Your cellular service provider, like Verizon or AT&T, is also an internet hub. Everyone's cell phones, computers, laptops, tablets, and smart devices all connect to Wi-Fi routers or cell towers that then connect to central offices, which are usually large buildings that handle all the traffic from one specific neighborhood, town, or city. You might have seen these facilities on TV, or maybe even visited one yourself. They're the ones with those enormous rooms filled with rows and rows of computer servers, which are specialized computers that store, send, and receive data. You might also recognize the people who manage them, which in the past could have been an army of nerdy-looking guys with glasses and pocket protectors carrying clipboards. But today is probably some ultra-fit hipster with a 401k who enjoys wearing cardigans and drinking craft beers. At any rate, those servers are all connected by miles and miles of Ethernet and fiber optic cable, passing everyone's data to and fro. Somewhere in Bismarck, North Dakota, along one of the cables, Uncle John's text has been received and is on its way to Bali. The packets are coming in from John's phone and are being handed off one by one through different servers until they reach the right connection. From there, his text will travel into the next and final layer of the internet. The bottom layer of the cake, the one holding up all the rest, is called the internet backbone. Told you it had a funny name, but the name makes sense because the backbone does the same job that the one in your own back does. It supports, sustains, receives, and transmits all the information created by the body of the internet from one part to the other. If Bismarck is in the internet's little finger and Bali is located somewhere around the kneecap, the backbone will get the message to where it needs to go. The internet backbone is made up of enormous data centers like the internet hubs, but much, much larger and connected by huge cables, strung out in a big spider web all over the world, a true worldwide web. But here's what you probably didn't know. Most of the world's internet traffic flows under the ocean. That's right. The main cables which connect the global internet between different countries and continents actually run along the bottom of the world's oceans and seas. There are great big ships whose only job is to crisscross international waters, laying the submarine internet cables, sometimes burying them under the ocean floor, repairing the cable if it gets damaged and replacing it when it gets old. Having all the world's internet traffic running on just a few cables strung across the bottom of the ocean between different countries might not seem like the safest way to do it, but there are whole companies, even an international committee, called the ICPC, dedicated to protecting the world's submarine internet cables. You might even think that nature itself is the most dangerous thing for the cables, like storms, currents, or even animals. There's even a video on YouTube of a shark biting the cable. I wonder how many texts, games, videos, bank transactions, or dank memes that shark was biting into. But the biggest danger to the cable is actually humans, with our boat anchors, propellers, fishing nets, and other underwater equipment causing the most damage. Keeping the cables alive and humming takes the constant care and attention of thousands of people just to keep the big LAN party going. So, after Uncle John's text went through his router, it zipped through the local internet hub in Bismarck off to a big regional data center, and then took a high-speed road trip out to California, where it hopped on the nearest submarine internet cable and headed for Bali. But what happens then? Well, the whole process repeats itself, but backwards. Uncle John's text comes up from its undersea journey through the internet backbone into a data center in Indonesia. Then it gets routed to a local internet hub in Bali. The hub then sends the packets to the Wi-Fi router or cell tower that's closest to Haley, which then turns the message back into radio waves and beams them down into Haley's iPhone. Haley is laying on a beach chair in the sun, working on her tan, when she hears her phone ding in her bag. She pulls it out and it reads, "Dear Haley, hope you're having a great time there in Bali. Have a Mai Tai for me and your Aunt Sue." Haley shakes her head. "Silly Uncle John." Then she closes her eyes and lays her head back, listening to the sounds of the surf gently rolling against a white sand beach. Haley has no idea of the incredible journey around the world that Uncle John's text message just took. And how could she? The whole thing happened in less than a second, at almost the speed of light, and invisible to the human eye. But now we know everything that it took just to bring that simple text from one part of the globe to the other. While those of us living in rich, developed countries might take the internet for granted, only about 60% of people around the world can get online today. There are lots of people still standing by the mailbox, waiting for their invitation to the LAN party to arrive. Research shows that being able to get on the internet is directly linked to higher literacy, improved education, more job prospects, and just a better quality of life. Lots of people can't get online just because they live in a very rural area with very few people around. Even in parts of the United States, big companies don't want to pay to run all those internet lines and data centers if there are relatively few people in a huge rural area that want to get online. The same is true for poor countries who can't afford it, or those with harsh terrain like jungles, deserts, and mountains, which make it difficult to build infrastructure for internet connectivity. That's where companies like SpaceX, Amazon, and even Google get involved. SpaceX's Starlink and Amazon's Cooper are both working on launching massive fleets of tiny satellites called constellations into orbit around the Earth to beam internet signals down into underserved areas. Google's parent company, Alphabet, owns a company called Loon, which launches big balloons that look like clear hot air balloons to float high above places that aren't wired up to the internet. And using radio transmitters and receivers connect directly to the internet like a Wi-Fi router. There are lots of ways to help people get their invitation to the LAN party, in so many ways that lives can be improved through internet connectivity. People in rural areas can get in touch with friends or family they were cut off from before, explore educational opportunities they didn't have access to, even get data from advanced global networks about climate and weather patterns to help with farming. Imagine a rice farmer in Thailand opening up her cell phone to figure out just the right time to irrigate the rice paddy, or a potato farmer in Peru getting data about the soil consistency in his area so he knows how much fertilizer to use. The possibilities are endless, and we all benefit from getting everyone everywhere invited to the party. So the next time you pull out your phone to send a text, play an online game, or watch a YouTube video, take a second to think about all the data and where it's coming from, where it's going, and all the people who helped make it happen. As far as Haley and her Uncle John know, that text message just popped out of his phone and into hers, as easy as breathing. But just think about all the routers, cell towers, microwave dishes, satellite relays, internet hubs, data centers, submarine cables, and all the thousands and thousands of cars, boats, planes, trains, and people it takes just to keep our big worldwide LAN party going. It might seem a little overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Just like the players at a LAN party, every computer is just one small piece of the whole. The internet is what's called a distributed network, meaning that it doesn't all flow in and out of just one place. If it did, and that one place stopped working, the whole internet could get shut down. But even if a major submarine cable gets cut, or a big regional data center has a power outage, the rest of the internet doesn't go down with it. All of the pieces which make up the vast WAN of the World Wide Web each play their role. You can rest easy knowing that the LAN party's not gonna stop even if someone trips over a plug or two along the way. Unless aliens invade, a super volcano explodes, or a meteor hits Earth. But that's probably not gonna happen either, so in the meantime, we can all party on. Haley can send a sarcastic reply to her Uncle John, you can keep listening to podcasts, your friends back home can see all the pics and YouTube videos of your adventures in the South Pacific, and the global information economy will keep on humming away, blissfully unaware of the vast infrastructure required to keep everyone texting, zooming, gramming, and dancing on TikTok.
I wonder if they'll have the internet on Mars.